AM 1060 WMEL. The views expressed on the following program are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and are not necessarily those of WMEL staff, management, or advertisers.
This is Joe Steckler, folks, your host for Helping Seniors. Our show is designed to help people get information, be educated on topics, and then we try to connect you with services. And as you see the show unfold today, I'm going to describe some things that are happening under the Affordable Care Act. They're very complicated, but they're extremely important to those of you that are going to be filing for Social Security benefits. I'm way past that. I can't make any changes. Luckily, my wife and I did not come under what's under the Affordable Health Care Act right now. For you people that are in your 60s and early 70s and thinking about applying for your Social Security benefits. But I'll point out in the show today how you need to really think about what you're doing, because this is extremely, extremely important. The phone number for our information specialist is 473-7770, and the information specialist is Kay Kaiser. You're going to get a person on the other end of the line that's going to ask you some questions after you make a call. You might call for a service and find out that you need more than you think you need, and generally, quite often, she can point you in a direction that will help you with resources you didn't even know were possible for you. And we'll talk about that during the show today. But the sponsors for the first part of the show include Kindred at-Home Care, formerly Gentiva, the United States' largest home health care organization now, the largest in the United States. The Eye Institute, Dr. Lee Sheldon, Bill Johnston, who's my panelist today, WMEL AM 1060, Worcester Hospital System, 11 Home Care, Atlantic Shores Rehabilitation, Ebony News Today, and there's one more, I got to read my own handwriting, Handy Pro of the Space Coast, which is a home health care company. They help you redesign your home so you can stay in there when you get older. And I could tell you some stories on that. But let's talk today, bring our panelist, Bill Johnston, on. Welcome, Bill.
Good afternoon, Joe.
Good afternoon, Bill. It's always a pleasure to have you. Folks, I told Bill that in 2014, in March, the first part of the month. Bill's always been the first guy on the show of the month. In 2012, 2014, and today, 2016, we're doing essentially the same type of show. And that should point out to you listeners the significance of what Bill's going to talk about and why it is so important for all of us to be better informed about what we're doing. So we're going to call the show today Protecting Yourself, Bill. Protecting yourself. And from a legal viewpoint, how does one best do that, Bill? Just generally speaking, as an elder law attorney, what would you say to somebody that asks you that question?
Well, from my perspective, it would be make sure you have your estate planning documents done. You know, your wills, your trusts, your beneficiary designations. I would also state that you would probably have to have your incapacity documents done, your durable power of attorney, your designation of healthcare surrogate, living will, to make sure that if something happened to you where you were unable to manage your affairs, you were covered there. I would also state that, you know, you may want to look at long-term care insurance in case you have a catastrophic long-term care situation arise.
But you and your practice of elder law, what would you say is the most often presented type seminar that you do, as well as some of the other attorneys in Brevard County? What's the most
common type of seminars?
Yeah.
I do at least once a month. I do an estate planning seminar, talk to people how their assets will pass on to their airs. And then I also do a Medicaid planning seminar showing people who may be in the depths of a long-term care event, how they may go about qualifying for Medicaid assistance in helping pay the bills. Occasionally, once in a blue moon, we'll do a seminar about protecting yourself from, fraud or theft, something of that nature, where there are unscrupulous people trying to prey on seniors.
Speaking of scams and protecting yourself, like our top of our show is today, Bill sends me a document from the newsletter from the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys. I read that thing in its entirety every time he sends it to me. But what always terrifies me is whether or not Bill reads it, because I don't know if he reads the darn thing, and if I ask him questions, I don't want to embarrass him, I don't want to embarrass myself. Do you read it?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. That's not good.
Well, a lot of that is not applicable to my practice, so...
I thought that too.
That's why I pass it on to you.
Yeah, but you give it to me. But when I read every one of those things, I realize that almost everything you have talked to me about over the years, going all the way back to 1998, that what you're saying is that it is not completely accurate, darn it, because almost everything you send to me and I read, I find some measure of help in there for people. It's just like one of the you mentioned scams, and I'm looking for a document I have here. I pulled it off, and it had to do with pilching and scanning stuff, and I found that one of the biggest. I find it here. That's the trouble when you have paper scattered, folks. You can't. It's hard to figure some of this darn stuff out. Yeah, I got it here. The IRS has seen an approximate 400% surge in phishing and malware incidents so far in the 2016 tax season. That's a lot, 400%, Bill.
Right, and I think you need to explain what phishing and malware are.
Well, that's why I brought it up. I want you to do that.
Okay, well, phishing is where they send you an email and basically say, you've won something, or you need to contact the bank and fill in your information. Basically, they're sending you an email hoping you return or respond to the email and divulge something of your personal information, like your birth date, your social security number, that kind of stuff that will allow somebody to basically steal your identity. Malware, same kind of thing. They're sending you a email, and usually there's some sort of link on there that you got to click on, and as soon as you click on that link, basically you've downloaded a virus onto your computer. And it could be just a benign virus that simply takes over your computer at time to time, or it could be something that crashes your whole system, and anything in between. So, those are two very, common types of internet fraud that is out there. The IRS, I don't think you recall, but remember, they got broken into.
Yes.
Somebody broke in their system, and they think they stole about 200,000 names. So it does not surprise me that you've seen a huge jump in the in phishing and malware incidents.
Bill, I understand the phishing part because I actually received 3 of those just this week. 3. And
Joe, I've probably received more than that. I've received probably just this week about 10.
Okay. I can get that, the phishing kind, but I can't. I think are the malware the kind, they send you something and you don't really know what it is, and you get your interest piqued and you want to pop that thing open to see what the heck they're talking about. Yeah, that's where you can get the malware, isn't it?
And as soon as you do that, you've downloaded the virus.
So what you have to do is not be so inquisitive. Now, this is Joe thinking. What I think is you'd have to be not so inquisitive, and in those cases, those things, just click them off, because just like if the IRS sends you something in a document on the Internet, almost with 100% surety, you can dismiss it, because they have to send you a document.
Yeah, for the most part, the IRS or the banks, your bank will not send you an email document of any sort. They will use regular mail. If you want to access your bank account online, you just get online banking, and that allows you to contact them, not vice versa. So you can be assured that, the site you're contacting is legitimately your bank.
Yeah. So, but one of the things I was going to ask Bill, what are the protective measures we can put in place? I think he's described most of those. Is there anything else?
If somebody contacts you and says they're from your bank, don't open the link. Don't do anything. Just get in your car, go down to the bank, and talk to the bank, or get on the phone and call the bank. They'll be able to pretty quickly tell you if it was them or not that called or sent you an email. Yeah.
You could save yourself just an awful lot of grief if you do that.
Right.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because sometimes it's hard to get through on the telephone, and it may be an inconvenience to stop what you're doing, but try to plan,
The general rule is if you don't know who sent that to you and it has some sort of link, you just delete it.
Well, that's what I do. And
just delete them.
Yeah, but also you have to be careful, because with the two buttons, like on my computer, are delete one or delete all. A couple of times I've made the mistake of hitting delete all, and then I got to go back and find out everything I've deleted, because sometimes what's theoretically in your spam file are people that you know and you work with and in your organization, but for some reason the Internet every once in a while puts them in a spam file.
And also, generally speaking, you want to delete them without opening them up, because there are some newer viruses that just by opening up the message to read it, you can actually download a virus.
I think something that might be turning up, or we get so many medical type things on the air, and I know all of us are concerned, because one of the documents you sent me from the National Association of Illinois Attorney Bill is an AARP report that states that retail prescription drug prices have increased 6 times faster than a general inflation rate of 1.5%. So they are saying that the average annual cost of prescription drugs has reached new heights of more than $11,000 per person.
That's insane.
So $11,000. I looked my cost up the other day. Mine were $9,338
per year
for mine. So I can see, when they tell me its average is $11,000, I can see, because you got highs and lows.
And if you've been following the political campaigns, some people are quite perturbed of how much we're actually paying for these things, when you can go to Canada or Germany and get these things for a fraction of the cost.
I know, and that's another part. I'm glad you brought that up, because some of the issues that really bother Americans are not really being discussed by our political campaign people.
Right.
What are some of the things from an overall viewpoint that you think that should be discussed or not being discussed, Bill?
Well, I think you need to take a look at what's going on with the wealth inequality. I mean, over the past 20 years, well, since the 90s, the amount of wealth at the top, the very top, we're living in a new age of robber barons. And it's not wealth that's accumulating that can be used to create jobs, which would spur growth in the economy. It's mostly people sitting on wealth and just collecting dividends and not, putting it to work. If you have a billionaire, he still only eats 3 meals a day. And if you have that billion actually out there working, you may be feeding, 10,000 mouths instead. So, that's one thing I think we've got to come to grips with is what exactly, the country should work for everybody, not just the people at the very top.
So what you're saying is if you accumulated wealth, you can sit on it and just get wealthier.
Yeah, because of how we tax dividends now. Yeah. We don't tax them. So
that's you don't under the new law.
Yeah, so you don't have to do anything. You can just sit there and collect dividends, make millions. It's not taxed.
That was one of
the worst changes, I thought, because that's what all these guys are doing. They're just putting it in the bank and living off the dividends. That's how people like Mitt Romney were paying 14% in taxes. That's how they do it.
So if you had a flat tax, it would cut into them a lot more.
Well, it depends on if you're going to give them all these exemptions again, I think you really need to tax dividends because otherwise people just sit on the money. If you tax them like ordinary income, then they're going to try and put them in something else that may, spur business growth and create jobs.
So these are some of the things you see as an eligible attorney because you have clients that just have a little bit of money. You have clients that have a lot of money.
I think the other thing, and I think that leads to the next thing, is the lack of retirement planning across America.
Can you talk about that some?
Yeah, well, back in, the 1980s, 30% of U.S. citizens had pensions. And nowadays, it is less than 3%. And
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so there are no more pensions unless you work for the government, basically. And that's the only people handing out pensions these days. And the replacement for the pension system was supposed to be the 401k, where everybody just, invest in the stock market and all that. And in 2007, a lot of those took a huge hit. But I think the most recent study I saw, 75% of 401ks are underfunded. So we're just setting ourselves up to have a huge system of poor retired senior citizens.
When we say 75% of the 401ks are underfunded, what does that really mean?
It means that there's not enough money in them to provide for these people over their retirement life.
But whose fault is that?
Well, it would be probably theirs.
Why?
Because, one, they didn't put enough into savings.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But in 2007, people were borrowing against those things, those 401ks, to bail out a kid from a mortgage foreclosure or to pay for illness or, there were a lot of reasons people were reaching into they were unemployed. But generally speaking, you're relying on the citizen themselves to put away the money for their retirement.
Right.
And since wages haven't grown, people don't have that disposable income to put away. Most Americans don't have. I think the study was something like 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
And I read that.
Yeah. I mean, that's just crazy. They have no savings. They live from one paycheck to the other paycheck.
I read another document, and I didn't bring it with me, that I pulled off the National Association of Alternate things, that senior debt has increased sixfold over the last 10 years.
Oh, I see people all the time with huge amounts of debt. Huge credit card bills.
Which brings me to something, and we'll talk about it, and if we have to talk about it more at the break, we will. It's called Project Hardest Hit. You're familiar with that?
I am not.
Wow. This is a good time to bring it up.
Tell me about it.
Project Hardest Hit is something that there's an attorney in town named Jonathan Lack that has been hired by the government. The government pays for him to do this. Let's say if you lost your job, because maybe the company downsized, or like the Space Coast, like when the space industry went away, there's a provision under the Affordable Health Care Act that says the government will pay for 1 year all your mortgage costs up to a total of $18,000, and it's forgiven. You don't have to repay it. So all this talk in the last couple of years, when we had all these people losing their homes through foreclosure because of the company downsizing, that could have been prevented. Jonathan Lack knew about this. My question has always been, why in the world didn't Florida Today or some organization find this out? And I find it out myself. You're an elder law attorney, and nothing has come across National Association of Elder Law Attorneys, because I've watched this for 5 years. I've never seen it in there.
Yeah, it looks like it's a state assistance program that's federally funded.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And the cost for people to get involved in this, it costs them nothing, because Jonathan does all the work for him free because the state pays him to do it. And it's a great program. And folks, if you want to find out, if you got somebody, it's still working now. Call Kay at 473-7770, and she will tell you how to contact Jonathan Lack to see about getting involved in Project Hardest Hit. Won't cost you a blessed cent. It could save you your home and a lot of other things. So we're right down to take our mid-show break. If you have a question about this, you can call here at the radio station, 631, let's see if I can get to the right phone number, 241-1060, 241-1060. You can ask us a question. I'll be glad to answer it. So stay with us.
AM 1060, WMEL.
This is Joe Steckler, folks, back live with the second part of the show. The sponsors for the second part of the show include Senior Scene Magazine, Hometown News, Spotlight Magazine, Seniors Helping Seniors, The Fountains of Melbourne, Beth Courtney of the Brazel Financial Team, Barbara McIntyre, Home Equity Loan Specialist, and Canadian Meds of Melbourne, and Vitas Hospice. And we're adding a lot more, folks. Next week I'll have an updated list. But what is significant is that we are having more people that are involved in the care of seniors, realizing the importance of this radio show, the television shows, and the articles appearing in Ebony News, Aldea, Hometown News, Spotlight Magazine, and Senior Scene Magazine. We have a lot of good things happening. I can pick them up on the National Association of Elder Law Attorney Network that Bill sends me. Bill, I recognize and realize he doesn't have time to read all this stuff. And the only reason I do is I just find more time, because I don't have to do every day what Bill has to do with all these clients, defending people, helping people get their Medicaid estate planning and all this stuff organized. The sad part... Okay. Kay, go ahead. I think Kate wants to say something. We forgot something. What do you got, Kay?
Yes, I was listening. You left the first part of the show talking about you called it Project Hardest Hit.
Yes.
It's actually called Florida Hardest Hit, and it's for those people who are underemployed or unemployed, and the payback on it from paying the mortgage up to, I think you said $18,000, I think that's correct, reduces 20% each year.
Yeah, but it also, there's a provision there, if you got your, as I looked into it a little further, there's it can help you pay down on a mortgage up to $50,000 at a reduced rate. The point is, there's just a lot of ways that the program can help people that are underemployed or unemployed.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on that because it's a terrific program that's literally unknown by a majority of people.
You just can't stand to let Bill and I talk by ourselves.
Okay, I will hang up now. I just wanted to add my 2 cents.
You hang up and just listen, and then you can talk to me after the show, and then I'll get you on the show probably next week.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Bye, Kay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. See, folks, this is one of the important things about radio and television and getting things out in print. I'm not afraid to say something that's either right or wrong. And I just got a document from the county government that said that in doing something, you cannot contact somebody else. You can only contact those listed on page 5 of the UMPI document. I've already talked to 2 attorneys, and to me, that's a violation of freedom of speech, and I talked to Bill about it. We're not going to go into a big discussion there, but what I think, Bill, what it points out is that if we don't hold our public servants accountable, if we don't hold our drug companies accountable in a better and fairer way, and if we don't do something about what legislators do to the medical programs without making some things really difficult, people without realizing it, we got problems. How do we handle all that?
You got problems, yes.
He won't answer that. Okay, all right, he won't answer that, but I'll give him one more. There is a thing on the National Association of All Law Attorneys, and I'll get Bill to comment on this one, but I want all of you to think about it. All of you that are retired, that are in your 70s, 80s, and 90s, that take prescription pain drugs, there is a move afoot in Congress, and there's a bill sponsored by Democrats and Republicans to say that, and Orrin Hatch is involved in this darn thing, and to say that you can only, it's aimed at, the bill is aimed at over-prescribing and pill diversion. But what they're going to do is limit getting your pain pills at more than one pharmacy. So let's say, in a case like I'm retired military, or all retired military people that get their pills from Patrick, some of the pills of Patrick, they don't prescribe some of the prescription pain drugs. You have to go down to CVS and get them. Or you get them shipped to you from a national center in Denver, Colorado. So, if this bill got passed, all the medications I have shipped to me from Colorado and the ones I have to get at CVS that are not carried to Patrick, I couldn't get. And that's not right, Bill.
Well, I think what they're trying to stop is people from doctor shopping, going around to multiple physicians, trying to get pain medications from, going to see 5 doctors, get 5 prescriptions, and then go to 5 different pharmacies to get them filled. And as you probably know or may know, in Florida, all our pharmacies are now linked, where it can show if somebody is doing that. But not all states have done that. Florida had a huge ground zero for the opioid abuse problem.
Exactly. You're right. I know that.
Yeah, and they're having a huge, deal with it up in the Northeast now. Everywhere.
Well, all drugs that there was a rule passed within the last 8 months that all drugs that have hydrocodone in them, you have to limit them to a 2-month prescription refill period. A pharmacy can refill up to 2 months, and as you get older, people overuse the drugs, but many people use the drugs as the doctor prescribes them. And I do that. I sometimes I hurt bad enough where I want to take a drug sooner than I should, but I don't do it. And when I check my due dates on my pills, I call my primary care doctor. I tell him what I need refilled. I get a prescription. I pick it up at his office with his signature on it, and I take it to Patrick Air Force Base. I like to think that, for all the people that violate the system, the millions that stay within the system, they have their chain pulled because of people that make the system work the wrong way.
Well, I would say that, the problem is it's gotten to be an epidemic, and now they are trying to figure out what ways work to curb it. I would imagine there would be some, I haven't seen the legislation, but I can't imagine there would not be some carve out for federal pharmacies.
It won't be if they don't know about it.
Right. Well,
See,
it may be in the legislation. I don't know. I haven't seen the legislation.
This is the problem. I find out all these things simply because what you said to me. And it was because Bill sent me something, and I talked about it on the last show. I'll talk about it today. And Bill, well, I know he'll be able to add some of it. I know he hasn't read about it to the extent that I have. But I told you on last week's show that I picked up a word called deeming. And I wondered, what the heck does deeming have to do with getting old? And I looked up the dictionary, I looked it up on the internet, and I ended up in the Australian law section where deeming is prescribed under Australian law to do this or not do that. And I said, what's that got to do with us and Social Security? So I did some more research, and I get on the internet and under the IRS, and sure enough, and I got the piece of paper from the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys that says that the Social Security office is with 100% surety telling the people that are calling and asking a question something is 100% in error. 100%. And what it is, folks, is that, and it's extremely complicated, and it has to do with those of you that are between the ages of 62 and 70. And it depends on when you file for your Social Security rights, what levels you want to go in at, what you want to have happen when you reach a certain age. And this is where deeming comes in. Deeming. Okay. You got me now?
It's used in other places, too, in the Social Security Code. It's used with supplemental security income, more commonly called SSI. They can deem income. It is basically, if you have income of certain levels, it reduces your benefit.
Yeah, but they think that they use deeming to mean that the Social Security people will take it upon themselves to think that because you did this, you meant that. So therefore, you're going to get this. And the problem is that if the thinking and the doing and the acting is not true in the case of people 62 to 70. And folks, if you're in that group age, or if you have children that are coming into that, or you know somebody coming to that age, I would strongly advise that you have them seek a financial advisor so you can find out if you're going to do this thing the right way, because it actually can cost you thousands of dollars in Social Security payments. That's the truth. And here's the sad part. If you don't do something about it by April the 29th, you're sunk. Because it's in the Affordable Care Act. It's one of the benefits of the Affordable Care Act that works against us that we just didn't know about. But that's the problem, Bill. It takes organizations like yours to dig into this stuff so that people like me can mention it on the air so people start thinking about it. That's the whole benefit to it.
I would agree with that. You got to have the resources to be able to delve into these things. And remember, the Affordable Care Act was, 1,300 pages long?
I forgot how many pages it is, but I can tell you right now I'm involved with...
Remember, there was actually a controversy, I think, whether it was 1,300 or 1,600. Do you remember that?
Yeah, well,
Congress couldn't remember what they passed.
I'm afraid there's more of that headed down the pike, and I just think that, what we think happens or not happens on a local level with our state senators and state what the heck is the
Representatives?
Representatives. It is important because they can pass laws that can make a terrible difference in what you're going to end up with.
Right.
It goes back to what you talked about in the first part of the show. We talked about Medicaid planning.
Right.
Right now, there are 45,000 people sitting in Florida waiting on a Medicaid planning or on a Medicaid waiting list, and they go by priorities of 1 to 5. And if you got a 5, you're more apt to get help, right?
Correct.
But as more and more people get sicker and more people get older, some of those people already have the criteria that puts them at a 5, so they get ahead of the 4s that have been waiting for years.
Well, and also, what do you do with the 5s or the 4s that are out of money and they're still on the wait list?
What do they do with them?
They don't do anything right now.
Well, I thought...
Money's not a criteria.
Bill, I thought that those people on a Medicaid waiting list, if a doctor said they needed nursing home care, they have no choice but to put them in a nursing home.
Correct. If they get to that point that they're out of money, they'll have to go to the nursing home. There won't be any choice,
right?
Because that's the only place they can get immediate care.
That is the sad part about it, because
the whole program is designed to prevent that.
Right.
Yeah, and we're back to what it was before we had the program.
Do you think, in all your work with senior citizens, do you think there's any way that our governing body can start to become smart enough to figure out how to make it work
look
better?
What's going on in Tallahassee right now. The governor has excess money, and instead of taking people off this wait list, what's he doing?
I don't know.
He wants a big tax cut for the business buddies. We got 58,000 seniors on a wait list for home and community-based services through the Medicaid program right now.
That's up from 45.
Yeah, and he's talking tax cut.
Oh, that's sick. And it's even sicker because I just looked at a guy named Bob Beck, who proudly talks about him being the head of the Florida Commission on Aging. And I just read their report last night that they're really touting a $3.1 million allocation in the current budget proposal for community care for the elderly, and another $3 million for Alzheimer's care. $3 million each. That's hell.
Did you see how many
nothing.
extra slots they got?
Pardon?
You only get about 812 extra slots for 58,000 people.
I know.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. You can't. There's no way, with what Scott is proposing to happen, there's no way to reduce the waiting list. The same thing with the federal government trying to cut down $21 trillion debt.
Right.
You can't give tax cuts if you've collected the money and people haven't injected that much to collecting the money. Why in the world not use it to help programs that you know are already in dire straits? Who in the hell thinks about this stuff in Tallahassee?
I don't know.
Oh, God.
I don't know.
It makes it hard, Bill. You and I have done these radio shows over the years. It's really hard to talk about some of the stuff when we see things that we know we could do a lot better about what we're not doing. So The other thing is, I think it's important. I wrote this. I do want to talk about a couple of things I had on my sheet. I said the importance of understanding the changes to Medicare. What are some of the changes to Medicare that people really need to know, or need to think about?
Well, besides the price.
The what?
The price of Medicare Part B, that is now fluctuates depending on the age you got Medicare.
Right.
And so now we have different pricing schemes. You could be paying $104 or $120, depending when you entered into the system. Beyond that, I don't know much of more changes in the system.
Other than the stuff that's proposed under the Affordable Health Care Act that the people are just starting to find out about now. And that's what really makes it bad. The other thing that...
there's a big... they've been curtailing durable medical equipment for years now.
What is that?
Durable medical equipment.
Okay.
Medicare has been cutting payments or not approving things, and they've been getting out of that business. So canes, walkers, beds, wheelchairs, all that kind of thing.
They're not paying for those readily?
No, they're not paying for them barely at all at this point.
Holy smokes. So then that makes our church medical lockers and other organizations that have chairs, canes, and stuff, makes them become more prominent, more important.
Right. Hopefully you got enough for the county.
Well, I know that... I can speak of my own church, Holy Name of Jesus Catholic Church over on the beach side. They've got a tremendous medical locker, and they have a volunteer that runs the program. All you have to do is call the church. Let's see if I found a number. 773-2873. Yeah, 773-2873. You can call that phone number, folks, if you need one of these porta potties, if you need walkers, rollators, canes, and everything. And don't think that it can't happen. And Bill, as much as I've talked to you about it over the years, and I've talked to listeners, I keep telling people, if you think you need a cane, please use it. I am now using my rollator more. I don't like to do it, but I do it because I don't want to fall. And the reason I'm pointing this out is this morning I had a guy come out to the house and fix my lazy boy chair. And he didn't get it all the way back on a rug, so I was going to lift the chair on the left side and put it back on the rug so I didn't hit the wall when I leaned back in the chair. And the next thing I knew, I was on the floor. I fell. Luckily, I was close to the floor. I managed to get my left arm down with my hand, and there was nothing to grab onto because the chair was sliding on the tile floor. So I just had to be as cautious as I could and try to limit the damage. Luckily, I'm okay. But it points out to me that all the talking we talk about, you and me talk about Medicaid, estate planning, if people don't pay attention to it, it doesn't make a bit of difference. You're going to fall. You're going to get in trouble with Medicaid.
I would agree with that, yes. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that we got 2 minutes left. What can you tell people about law, legal things that Bill Johnston encounters in his practice? Tell people some of the perils of Pauline.
Well, like I said at the onset of the program, we get people who don't do estate planning, and we end up in will or trust contests litigated in court, or we end up having to do very expensive probates. We get people who don't do those simple incapacity documents I mentioned, the durable power of attorney, the healthcare surrogate, the living will, and then we're in, some guardianship type situation where, your loved ones may or may not be put in charge of your affairs. And then, the people who don't have a plan for long-term care. All it takes, as you said, is one fall. And next thing you know, you're in some sort of long-term care situation. And, most people don't know nursing homes run anywhere from $7,500 to $10,000 a month. Not many people can afford that level of spending. So, have a plan. Don't ignore a lot of these risks because they happen all the time.
What Bill's saying is extremely important, folks, and for all of you that don't believe in using rollators and walkers and canes like that, you'd be surprised at the number of people that open doors for you. And I'm really pleased when I see our younger children, 8, 9, and 10 years old, see me coming, and they'll open the door for me. So we have a lot of good people out there. We have a lot of good information on this show. And I want to thank Bill for what he did today by giving his time to the show as he has the first week of every month. Thank you, Bill. And thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.